The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening and a warm welcome to all. I am Mridul Mishra from the corporate communication team, and on behalf of Care Ratings, welcome you to our today's discussion on reimagining education with the new education policy 2020. We sincerely appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar, and we are fortunate to assemble our esteemed speakers for today. Dear sirs, thank you and welcome. Dear participants, we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the panel discussion. In case of any queries, you are please requested to key in your queries. Now may I invite Mr. Milind Gadkari, Senior Director at Care Ratings, who would be moderating this session. Mr. Milind has more than 24 years of experience in rating industry, rating corporates, financial sector, companies, securitization, and so on. He's a BE Mechanical and MMS Finance by qualification and has done CFA from CFA Institute USA and FRM from GARP USA. Now may I request Mr. Milind to take over the proceedings, please?
Thank you, Mridul. I take this opportunity to welcome our guest speakers for the day. Dr. Vikas Chandra Swarnakar is the Chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi University of Medical Sciences and Technology, Jaipur, and Director of Jaipur's Fertility Center. He is one of the few clinicians in the state to have double postgraduate degree of Masters in Surgery, in General Surgery and Gynecology. He is presently working as a faculty and consultant in reproductive medicine and IVF. He has had his formal training in ART at Singapore and has over 5 years of experience as a fertility physician and endoscopist. Apart from being a specialty doctor, he is also an administrator and healthcare entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in managing a large 1,400-bed university teaching hospital, Mahatma Gandhi Hospital. On behalf of Care Ratings, I welcome Dr. Vikas. Our second speaker for the day, Professor Aditya Shastri, is the Vice Chancellor of Banasthali Vidyapith and discharging the duties as CEO and Chief Academic Officer of the university. He obtained MSc in Computer Science and MSc in Mathematics from BITS Pilani before moving to USA for further studies and earned Master's degree in Mathematics. He later moved to MIT, from where he completed his PhD in 1990. After serving the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research for over 1 year, he moved to Banasthali Vidyapith, where he has remained ever since. He has played a key role in the Banasthali Vidyapith institution, evolving itself from a small college to the largest residential women's university in the world, with highest national accreditation and global recognitions such as the World University Rankings. On behalf of Care Ratings, I welcome Professor Aditya. In today's webinar, we shall be covering the education sector, and there will be special focus on the new education policy 2020, which was announced by the Ministry of Education a few days back. I would now request Vishta to please carry on with the presentation.
Thank you, Milind sir. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. As viewed in the chart on screen, India added almost 1/3 of its population in the past 2 decades from 1999 to 2019. And presently, our country has 1.37 billion individuals and growing even more as I speak. Today, India constitutes nearly 18% of the entire world's population. To draw a perspective, we compare this with our neighboring nation, China, which is presently the world's most populated nation globally. China's population grew 12% in the past 2 decades, while India grew 32%. The chart on the right-hand side depicts India's age-wise demographics. Our country has a young population with 27% individuals between 0 to 14 years of age. And this category includes the school-going population. Such young population in our country has given way to newer and growing individualistic needs in the country for food, healthcare, education, which are the basic necessities for every individual in the world. Now we shall focus on the education system in India. According to the 75th round of National Sample Survey conducted by MOSPI between July 2017 and June 2018, 78% of Indians aged between 7 years and above are considered literate. Literacy refers to any person who can read and write a simple message in any language with understanding. The table on top left corner shows that literacy rates in India are highest for urban males and at 92% and lowest among rural females at 65%. The chart on top right-hand side is a state-wise analysis and shows that Kerala has the highest literacy rate of 96%, followed by Delhi with 89%, while the lowest is in Andhra Pradesh with 66% and Rajasthan with 70%. This chart in the bottom depicts the gross enrollment ratio in schools across India. The chart shows that the ratio has been declining in recent years in almost all levels, though marginally. The primary level of education, which refers to grade 1 to 5, declined to 95% in financial year 2017. In upper primary level of education, the ratio dropped to 90.7%. However, the secondary level of education from grade 9 to 10 witnessed a marginal growth to 79.4. For grade 11 and 12, the gross enrollment ratio is lowest at 55.4%. The analysis of the chart also shows that dropouts from schools are rising with each level. Some of the main reasons for dropouts from schools are kids being engaged in domestic activities, financial constraints, schools located at a distant location, language or the medium of instruction used is unfamiliar, the student has already completed the desired level or class, early marriage, non-availability of female teachers and girls' toilet, etc. Through this, we understand that the education scenario in India is at a poor stage, which draws our attention to the efforts by government to enroll an individual in schooling and to keep him enrolled in the system as he progresses through various grades. There is a pressing need for increase in efforts, especially by state governments, to improve the enrollment ratios in schools in India. Now onwards, our presentation shall focus on the new education policy 2020. 29th of July 2020 is a landmark day for India, as after nearly 3 decades, the country gets a new policy for education system called the New Education Policy 2020. The last time when a policy of similar stature was announced was about 34 years ago. The New Education Policy 2020 henceforward replaces the National Policy on Education announced in 1986 and modified in 1992. The Indian education system was in dire need for a change since a long period of time, and with the announcement of New Education Policy 2020, various stakeholders, including students, teachers, parents, and others associated, wholeheartedly welcomed this new reform. According to the Ministry of Education, this policy shall bring major structural reforms in schools and higher education systems of the country. The New Education Policy of 2020 includes 27 sections, which has announcements for school as well as higher education. The first and one of the most important announcements was the change of the school education structure. With emphasis on early childhood care and education, the 10+2 structure of school curriculum shall be replaced by a 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 curricular structure. This will bring the uncovered age group of 3 to 6 years under school curriculum, which is a crucial stage for a child's brain development. The new stage will have 12 years of schooling, in addition to 3 years of preschooling. The chart on screen depicts the same. This new structure is expected to bring more scope for pre-primary schooling and teachers in the country. Also, in India, many students are initially enrolled in a pre-primary school which may not have grade 1 and above. However, with the new system, primary and secondary schools that did not have pre-primary classes will now want to add these additional grades, that is nursery, junior and senior KG, in their schools, so as to encourage students to continue staying enrolled in the same school since the start. Adding additional grades in schools will also require fresh infrastructure, funding from the government, and bring scope for pre-primary teachers. The second section was on foundational literacy and numeracy. A large proportion of students currently in elementary school have not attained foundational literacy and numeracy. Therefore, it is now a national mission for every child to attain foundational literacy and numeracy by grade 3 by 2025. Presently, some schools have over 50 students in one classroom, which makes it difficult or challenging for teachers to handle all students at the same time, and therefore students lack discipline during lectures. This could affect the effectiveness of the teaching as attention span of students reduces. To address this challenge, the new education policy of 2020 aims at capping the pupil to teacher ratio to 30:1, and areas that have large number of socio-economically disadvantaged students shall aim for a ratio of under 25:1. Another announcement was on providing a simple breakfast in addition to midday meals in schools. In rural areas where parents are financially challenged and not able to afford basic needs, their main motive to enroll children in schools is to get nutritious food for their kids, which is provided by schools. The new education policy 2020 focuses on providing healthy and nutritious meal to kids, which shall indirectly help control the dropout rates from schools in future. Unfortunately, due to the outbreak of COVID-19, most schools across India are temporarily shut, and hence these kids are now deprived of healthy food from schools, which is expected to have probably increased the dropout rates of students during the ongoing pandemic. The third section was curtailing dropout rates and ensuring universal access of education at all levels. As covered in my earlier section, that gross enrollment ratio is dropping with every level of education. In the new education policy 2020, it is now a goal to achieve 100% gross enrollment ratio in preschool to secondary level by 2030. However, in order to achieve 100% gross enrollment ratio by 2030, the government first needs to address the existing challenges. More funding and infrastructure will definitely be required. Additionally, effective counseling of parents will be needed to make them realize the importance of education in today's day and time. The fourth section is on curriculum and pedagogy in schools, where learning should be holistic, integrated, enjoyable, and engaging. The education system was in pressing need for a change in curriculum that dispenses with the rote system of learning and focuses on concepts which have high relevance today. New teaching method and curriculum shall promote problem-solving skills and usage of application-based methods of learning. Students shall be introduced to coding in grade 6 and be taught on evolving technologies like artificial intelligence, etc. These are the skills which are required by employers today and will thus improve the employability of graduating students. Also, there shall be no rigid separation among curricular and extracurricular activities among arts, humanities, and sciences, or between vocational or academic streams. Providing this choice will encourage students to pursue subjects of their interests and where they wish to make a career, rather than studying subjects which might disinterest them. Unfamiliar language or medium of instruction is another barrier for students to not enroll in schools. The new education policy of 2020 addresses this challenge and has made the medium of instruction until at least grade 5 and beyond, if possible, to be the mother tongue or local or regional language. While this announcement addresses the challenge of enrollment in schools in lower grades, but might pose a new challenge of language barrier in higher education institutes where the medium of instructions may not be the mother tongue, but usually a common language like English or Hindi. According to the NSS 75th round survey held in 2017-18 by MOSPI, the tuition fee accounts for 50% of the overall expenditure on education. The second largest component is of books, stationery, and uniform of 20%. To ease the financial burden of students, the new education policy promotes providing textbooks at the lowest possible cost, preferably at the cost of production or printing. This will, up to an extent, help mitigate the burden of textbook purchase cost from the students, and access to downloadable and printable versions of all textbooks provided by states or union territories will act as an additional resource and be of incremental use to students. Student assessment will now shift from summative, which primarily tests rote memorization skills, to more regular and formative mode, which tests high order skills like analysis, critical thinking, and conceptual clarity. The progress card of all students for school-based assessment will be a 360-degree and multi-dimensional that reflects in great detail the progress and uniqueness of each learner. It will include self, teacher, and peer assessment, progress project-based and inquiry-based learning, quizzes, etc. While the board exams for grade 10 and 12 will be continued, the existing system of board and entrance examinations shall be reformed to eliminate the need for undertaking coaching classes. Students will be able to choose subjects in which they take board examinations. Depending on their individualized interests, board exams will also be made easier and test primarily core capacities or competencies rather than months of coaching and memorization. To further eliminate the high stakes aspect of board exams, all students will be allowed to take board exams on up to 2 occasions during any given school year, one main examination and one for improvement, which is if desired. Board exams in certain subjects could be redesigned to have 2 parts, the objective and multiple choice, and the other could be a descriptive type. The next and 5th section of new education policy is on teacher recruitment and career path. Teachers will be recruited through robust, transparent processes, and promotions will be merit-based. By 2030, the minimal degree qualification for teaching will be 4-year integrated B.Ed degree. The 6th section is on equitable and inclusive education with learning for all. This section says that there shall be special emphasis on socially and economically disadvantaged groups. There will be focus on strengthening schemes such as targeted scholarships, conditional cash transfers to incentivize parents to send their children to school, providing bicycles for transport, etc., that have significantly improved participation of such disadvantaged group in the schooling system in certain areas. The seventh section is on efficient resource, effective governance through school complexes or clusters. Small school sizes are economically suboptimal and operationally complex to run good schools in terms of deployment of teachers as well as provision of critical physical resources. Small schools also present a systemic challenge for governance and management. This problem can be addressed by establishing a group structure called the school complex, consisting of one secondary school together with all other schools offering lower grades in its neighborhood, including Anganwadis in a radius of 5 to 10 kilometers. The aim of the school or complex will be greater resource efficiency and more effective functioning, coordination, leadership, etc. The last and final section of New Education Policy 2020 for school education is standard setting and accreditation for school education. At present, all main functions of governance and regulation of the school education system, namely the provision of public education, the regulation of education institutions in policy making, are handled by a single body, that is the Department of School Education or its arms. This leads to conflict of interests and excessive centralized concentration of power. It also leads to ineffective management of the school system, as efforts towards quality educational provision are often diluted by the focus on the other roles, particularly regulation, that the departments of school education also perform. The key principles and recommendations of new education policy regarding the state school education system are to significantly bring down the heavy load of regulatory mandates currently borne by schools. The Department of School Education will be responsible for overall monitoring and policy making for continual improvement of the public education system. It will not be involved with the provision and operation of schools or with the regulation of schools in order to eliminate conflict of interest. To ensure that all schools follow certain minimal professional and quality standards, states and union territories will set up an independent state-wise body called the State School Standards Authority, which will establish a minimal set of standards based on basic parameters, namely safety, infra, number of teachers across subjects, grades, financial probity, and sound processes of governance. Dear audience, these were the announcements pertaining to the school education system from the new education policy. Thank you, and now I would request Harsh to please carry on with the presentation, who shall focus on the higher education segment. Over to you, Harsh.
Thanks, Vaishta. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be covering the announcements pertaining to higher education, along with the impact of such announcements, as well as challenges which would be faced in the implementation of the policy. As per National Education Policy 2020, quality higher education must aim to develop good, thoughtful, well-rounded, and creative individuals, and should enable them to develop capabilities across a range of disciplines, including sciences, social sciences, arts, humanities, languages, as well as professional, technical, and vocational subjects, with the aim of developing holistic individuals. However, the higher education system in India is currently facing some problems, due to which these objectives have not been achieved. The higher education system is highly fragmented, with presence of large number of small and big colleges and universities. There is less emphasis on development of cognitive skills and learning outcomes by the institutions. There is rigid separation of disciplines with presence of early specialization. So a student opting for a particular stream cannot study subjects of other streams. The presence of higher education institutions is not widespread. Further, with very few institutions teach in local languages. There is limited teacher and institutional autonomy, as many of the colleges, which are not autonomous, have to follow guidelines of affiliating university. There is no proper mechanism to ensure career progression of faculty and institutional leaders. There is less focus on research at most universities and colleges. There are issues with respect to suboptimal governance in the higher education institutions. The regulatory system governing these institutions is ineffective. There are low standards of undergraduate education due to large number of affiliating universities. In order to overcome these challenges, the policy envisions key changes in the current system. The first change involves phasing out single-stream higher education institutions and moving towards system consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges by 2030, with at least one in or near every district, while also having presence in underserved regions. The same will end fragmentation of higher education by transforming higher education institutions into large multidisciplinary universities, colleges, and HEI clusters or knowledge hubs, each of which will aim to have student strength in thousands by 2040. Overall, there would exist three types of higher education institutions in the system. The first category would be of research-intensive universities, which would place equal emphasis on teaching and research. Second category would be of teaching-intensive universities, which would lay great emphasis on teaching, but still conduct significant research. Third category would comprise autonomous degree granting college, which would generally be smaller than a typical university. Steps will also be taken towards developing higher education institutions, both public and private, that have medium of instruction in local or Indian languages or bilingual. Gross enrollment ratio in higher education, including vocational education, will be increased from 26.3% in 2018 to 50% by 2035. Further, to attain these goals, new institutions will be set up and existing ones will be expanded and consolidated, and higher education institutions offering high quality education will be incentivized. The institutions will have the option to run open distance learning courses and online courses based on their accreditation. National Testing Agency will conduct entrance examinations for admissions in undergraduate, graduate, and fellowships in higher education institutions. The 12th five-year plan, 2012 to 2017, estimated that around less than 5% of Indian workforce in the age group of 19 to 24 receive formal vocational education. The policy aims to integrate vocational education programs into mainstream education in all education institutions in a phased manner. By 2025, at least 50% of learners through the school and higher education system will have exposure to vocational education. There would be a stage-wise mechanism for granting graded autonomy, academic, administrative, and financial, to colleges through a transparent system of graded accreditation. All colleges currently affiliated to a university shall be supported and encouraged to attain the required benchmarks over time to secure the prescribed accreditation benchmarks and eventually become autonomous degree granting colleges. With appropriate accreditation, the autonomous degree colleges can aspire to become a university. The present complex nomenclature of higher education institutions in the country, such as deemed to be university, affiliating university, affiliating technical university, unitary university, shall be replaced simply by university on fulfilling the criteria as per norms. The curricular structures will become more flexible in such a way that students of a particular stream will be able to study subjects of other streams. Further, the curricular structure will also offer multiple entry and exit points to students. The undergraduate degree will be of either 3 or 4 year duration with multiple exit options within this period with appropriate certifications. The 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor's program shall be the preferred option since it allows the opportunity to experience the full range of holistic and multidisciplinary education, in addition to the focus on the chosen major and minors as per the choices of the student. The 4-year program may also lead to a degree with research if the student completes a rigorous research project in their major areas of study. The higher education institutions will have the flexibility to offer different designs of master's programs, like 2-year program or 1-year program or integrated 5-year bachelor's master's program. Master of Philosophy, which is a 2-year postgraduate academic research program, has been discontinued. Further, there will be increased faculty and institutional autonomy in setting curriculum. An academic bank of credit shall be established, which would digitally store the academic credits earned by the students from various recognized higher education institutions, so that the degrees from an higher education institution can be awarded taking into account credits earned. Model public universities at par with IITs, IIMs, etc., called multidisciplinary education and research universities, will be set up, which will aim to attain the highest global standards in quality education and will also help set the highest standards for multidisciplinary education across India. Curriculum and pedagogy will be designed by institutions and faculty to ensure a stimulating and engaging learning experience for all students. Higher education institutions shall move to a criterion-based grading system that assesses student achievement based on the learning goals for each program, making the system fairer and outcomes more comparable. Higher education institutions shall also move away from high-stake examinations towards more continuous and comprehensive evaluation. Universities and colleges will be required to set up high-quality support centers and will be given adequate funds and academic resources to support students from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. There will also be professional, academic, and career counseling available to all students. India will be promoted as a global study destination, providing premium education at affordable costs. High-performing Indian universities will be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries. And similarly, universities from among the top 100 universities in the world will be facilitated to operate in India. A legislative framework facilitating such entry will be put in place, and such universities will be given special dispensation on par with other autonomous institutions of India. Financial assistance to students shall be made available through various measures. Private higher education institutions will also be encouraged to offer large number of free ships and scholarships to their students. In order to increase faculty motivation levels, the policy aims to improve basic infrastructure and facilities, providing access to latest educational technology that enables better learning experience, rationalizing duty timings of faculty and student-teacher ratio, and making them non-transferable across institutions. The faculty will also be given freedom to design curricular and pedagogical approach within the approved framework and to conduct innovative teaching, research, and service. They will also be incentivized for excellent work and will be held accountable if they are not able to deliver as per basic norms. Higher educational institutions will have clearly defined, independent, and transparent processes and criteria for faculty recruitment. Excellent faculty with high academic and service credentials, as well as demonstrated leadership and management skills, will be identified early and trained through a ladder of leadership positions. All leadership positions and heads of institutions will be offered to persons with high academic qualifications and demonstrated administrative and leadership capabilities, along with abilities to manage complex situations. National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education will be formulated by National Council for Technical Education in consultation with NCERT. By 2030, the minimum degree qualification for teaching will be a 4-year integrated B.Ed degree, which will be a dual major holistic bachelor's degree in education as well as a specialized subject. Moreover, all standalone teacher education institutions will be required to convert to multidisciplinary institutions by 2030. Furthermore, in order to maintain uniform standards for teacher education, the admission to pre-service teacher preparation programs shall be through suitable subject and aptitude tests conducted by the National Testing Agency and shall be standardized, keeping in view the linguistic and cultural diversity of the country. All B.Ed programs will include training in time-tested as well as the most recent techniques in pedagogy. The policy envisions ensuring equitable access to quality education to all students with a special emphasis on socio-economically disadvantaged groups. For increasing participation of these groups in higher education, actions that are specific to higher education shall be adopted by all governments, which include increasing access by establishing higher educational institutions in areas with higher population of these groups, providing more financial assistance and scholarships, etc. Similarly, higher education institutions would also be required to take some initiatives like mitigating opportunity cost and fees for higher education, providing more financial assistance and scholarships, etc. Through a suitable system of graded accreditation and graded autonomy, and in a phased manner over a period of 15 years, all higher education institutions in India will aim to become independent, self-governing institutions pursuing innovation and excellence. Upon receiving the appropriate graded accreditation, a board of governors shall be established who will be empowered to take all decisions regarding governance. The board of governors shall be responsible for meeting all regulatory guidelines. The research and innovation investment in India is only 0.69% of GDP as compared to other advanced countries. The policy envisions a comprehensive approach to transforming the quality and quantity of research in India and envisions the establishment of a National Research Foundation in this regard. The National Research Foundation will be governed by a rotating board of governors consisting of the very best researchers and innovators across fields. National Research Foundation will provide a reliable base of merit-based but equitable peer-reviewed research funding, helping to develop a culture of research in the country through suitable incentives for and recognition of outstanding research, and by undertaking major initiatives to seed and grow research at state universities and other public institutions. Institutions that currently fund research at some level will continue to independently fund research according to their priorities and needs. However, National Research Foundation will carefully coordinate with other funding agencies and will work with different academies to ensure synergy of purpose and avoid duplication of efforts. The mechanistic and disempowering nature of the regulatory system has been rife with very basic problems. In order to address these issues, a new body, that is the Higher Education Commission of India, will be established. The first vertical of Higher Education Council of India will be the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, which will function as the common single point regulator for the higher education sector, including teacher education, but excluding medical and legal education. There will be light but tight regulatory approach that mandates full public self-disclosure of finances, procedures, course and program offerings, and educational outcomes. The second vertical of Higher Education Council of India will be a meta-accrediting body called the National Accreditation Council, which will supervise and oversee accrediting institutions. The third vertical of Higher Education Council of India will be the Higher Education Grants Council, which will carry out funding and financing of higher education based on transparent criteria, and will also be entrusted with the disbursement of scholarships and developmental funds for higher education institutions. The fourth vertical of Higher Education Council of India will be the General Education Council, which will frame expected learning outcomes for higher education programs. Professional standard setting bodies will be the members of General Education Council and will continue to draw curricula and lay down academic standards in particular fields of learning. All higher education institutions, public and private, shall be treated on par within this regulatory regime. There will be common national guidelines for all legislative acts that will form private higher education institutions. Transparent mechanisms for fixing of fees with an upper limit for different types of institutions, depending on their accreditation, will be developed. Further, exceptionally well-performing higher education institutions will be helped by central and state governments in expanding their institutions. These are the other key areas of focus mentioned in the National Education Policy. The policy aims to increase focus on professional education. Professional education is an integral part of the overall higher education system, and NEP envisages a series of steps for upliftment of the same. Apart from agricultural, legal, healthcare, and technical education, India must also take the lead in preparing professionals in cutting-edge areas that are fast gaining prominence, such as artificial intelligence, 3D machining, big data analysis, and machine learning. Adult education. Strong and innovative government initiatives for adult education, in particular, to facilitate community involvement and the smooth and beneficial integration of technology, will be effected as soon as possible to expedite all important aim of achieving 100% adult and youth literacy. Promotion of Indian languages, arts, and culture. The policy recognizes that the knowledge of the rich diversity of India should be imbibed first-hand by learners. Efforts to preserve and promote all Indian languages, including classical, tribal, and endangered languages, will be taken on with new vigor. An autonomous body, the National Educational Technology Forum, will be created to provide a platform for the free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, planning, administration. The thrust of technological interventions will be for the purposes of improving teaching, learning, and evaluation processes, supporting teacher preparation and professional development, enhancing educational access, and streamlining educational planning, management, and administration. The recent rise in epidemics and pandemics necessitates that we are ready with alternative modes of quality education whenever and wherever traditional and in-person modes of education are not possible. There is a need to invest in creation of open, interoperable, evolvable, public digital infrastructure in the education sector that can be used by multiple platforms and point solutions to solve for India's scale, diversity, complexity, and device penetration. A dedicated unit for the purpose of orchestrating the building of a digital infrastructure, digital content, and capacity building will be created in the ministry to look after the e-education needs of both school and higher education. Now I will discuss the impact of higher education announcements on students. The students will have the flexibility to study a combination of subjects across different disciplines as per their own interest, which could be different from normal combination of subjects. The said option was not available in the present higher education system. Such choice and flexibility will help match youth aspirations and enable innovations expected in the workplace of the future. Exit and entry option will provide relief to students as they can take breaks in between the courses as per their convenience. A student can enroll in a 4-year undergraduate program and will have the option to exit with a certificate at the end of first year, a diploma at the end of second year, or a degree at the end of third year. Even on exit, without completing the full duration of the program, students will have the option to re-enter the program from where they had left, at the same or a different institution. Under the new system, single university entrance exam would be conducted by the National Testing Agency. Earlier, to seek admission across various universities, a student had to go through the burden of multiple examinations, plus the varied difficulty level of question question papers across many central universities. If this plan is implemented, a student will have to give only one entrance exam and will get saved from the burden of many. At the same time, the question papers level will be standardized, will become error-free as National Testing Agency will conduct it, and the admission process will also get streamlined. Instead of going out of the country to study in reputed universities, the students will be able to get the same high quality education in India with the setup of foreign universities in the country, thus resulting in cost savings for students. The policy aims at setting up of multidisciplinary universities or colleges in every district by 2030. The same will renew the country's focus on arts and humanities, vocational education and soft skills, which would improve the other skills of the students. The multidisciplinary form of education would ensure that the students are skilled well for the career ahead, as remote learning of concepts has kept the students far behind in terms of skills. An academic credit bank database is proposed to be set up to maintain credits digitally. The academic bank of credit will help store credits, and the concept of credits will finally get more weightage in India. The system of credits will enable tracking of the student's higher education journey. This kind of flexibility gives students enough options in planning their careers while taking care of life events that may require them to discontinue their studies temporarily at any juncture. The students will have the freedom to experiment with what they have to learn and will have the flexibility in it. The country has been lagging behind in terms of research activities, which is also evident from the relatively low expenditure as a percentage of GDP when compared to other advanced countries. Making research a part of undergraduate and postgraduate programs would benefit in terms of increase in research activities, which would also be supported by National Research Foundation. Further, with the setting up of the operations of foreign universities in the country, students who used to go abroad for studies will get an opportunity to get such quality higher education in the country, which would also improve the country's research base. The policy proposes to integrate vocational education with school education and higher education, which while also providing opportunities of internships with experts in these fields. The same would help in identifying the students' interest in the earlier years and can further help them in deciding their careers in these areas. The policy proposes various measures to improve pre-service teacher education, which includes starting 4-year integrated B.Ed program, introducing multidisciplinary education of teachers, introducing aptitude tests for admission in pre-service teacher programs, teacher training for potential teachers in schools, etc. The said measures are expected to result in improvement in quality of teaching over the period, which is a much required necessity to improve overall higher education system and ultimately quality of students. Now I'll discuss the impact of announcements on private higher education institutions. The entry and exit option can lead to fluctuation in revenue streams of the higher education institutions. As in the existing system, the institution was assured of cash flows for the entire duration of the course, as the student used to enroll for the entire course duration, and the same could get affected if the student takes break in between the course. In order to have uniformity in education standards, a single umbrella body was always a requirement. Multiple independent governing bodies led to many standardization issues across institutions, and along with that, any improvement plan to be implemented in this higher education domain took years. With clear demarcation of authorities between different regulatory bodies under single regulator, uniformity and coordination for all institutions in the country will be much easier. Process changes will be easily implemented and will also be effective. It will eliminate the duplication and disjunction of regulatory efforts by the multiple regulatory agencies that exist at the current time. The same would also help in smooth running of higher education institutions. The policy allows universities to set up offshore campuses, which would increase the global presence of domestic higher education institutions. Further, many foreign universities can now set up institutes in India. It will not only lead to competition for the domestic higher education institutions, but also flow of talent and key practices from the outside to India, which will ultimately lead to a great deal of improvement in the country's education standards and will also provide real exposure to students. The existing universities and colleges which are already offering multidisciplinary education and are highly accredited would not get impacted much. However, the private sector entities that are offering single stream course or few courses would be required to invest funds heavily to become multidisciplinary and autonomous over a period of time. Investments would also be required going forward for attaining autonomous status in order to improve their accreditation by improving institutions' infrastructure, facilities, including research facilities, quality of teaching, etc. The new policy allows for charging of fees as per the accreditation received, while putting a cap on the same. Hence, smaller institutions may find it difficult to fund these investments. The policy aims to do away with the practice of rote learning and reduce course content while making it simple for the students to understand, so that private tuition and coaching may not be required. Further, it also aims to shift to formative assessment in place of summative assessment that encourages coaching culture. However, the requirement of coaching also depends on the quality of teaching in class and students' ability to grasp teachings. Considering these facts, it remains to be seen if the new system can undermine the importance of coaching. It also depends on the capability of the coaching sector to adapt to the new system. However, the common entrance exam for getting admission into universities and colleges across the country, including for pre-service teacher education programs, as well as school exams for class 3rd, 6th, and 8th, provide good opportunity to the coaching sector. Getting skilled in areas of vocational education in the earlier years during school and college education would do away with the requirement of getting training in vocational institute later on. And the same could result in decline in enrollments in these institutes in the long term to some extent. Vocational institutions will also be required to become multidisciplinary going forward in order to survive in the higher education system. Now I'm going to discuss the challenges which will be faced in the implementation of the policy. According to UDICE data for 2016-17, the fraction of SC students to total students at primary level was about 19.6%, which falls to 17.3% at the higher secondary level. The said fraction for ST student declines from 10.6% to 6.8%, and for differently abled children, the same declines from 1.1% to 0.25%, with even greater declines for female students within each of these categories. The decline in enrollment in higher education is even steeper. There are a lot of factors which are responsible for dropout at school level, which mainly include lack of access to quality schools, poverty, social mores and customs, and language. Further, at higher education level, the key reason for dropout are lack of knowledge of higher education opportunities, economic opportunity cost of pursuing higher education, financial constraints, admission processes, geographical and language barriers, etc. These problems continue to persist despite various initiatives taken by government in the past, like introducing Right to Education Act, providing bicycles, cash transfers, etc. Bridging these gaps in access, participation, and learning outcomes of children will be a key challenge, considering the fact that there is not going to be significant change in the situation of these socioeconomically disadvantaged groups. Without their active participation, achieving desired enrollment levels looks difficult. Government envisages increasing combined expenditure of central and state governments on education from 4.43% in 2017-18 to 6% of GDP in future, a level which has not been achieved so far. The implementation of policy will require significant investments in infrastructure, technology, and teachers training. Government will also be required to financially support public as well as private education institutions, as well as students from socioeconomically disadvantaged groups to achieve these objectives laid down in the policy. Considering the present fiscal position of the central and state governments, as well as priority accorded to various other sectors in budgetary allocation of funds, increasing proportion of expenditure on education looks difficult. Further, the coordination between central government and different state governments for successful and timely implementation of the policy at grassroots level will remain a challenge, considering the differences between central government and state governments. The policy requires higher education institutes to become multidisciplinary and attain autonomy status while upgrading themselves to university status in future. All this requires significant investments in improving infrastructure, facilities, hiring qualified teachers, etc. Small higher education institutions may face difficulty in attaining these objectives due to shortage of funds. Further capping of the fees by regulatory bodies may leave little scope for funding. In such case, these institutions will be left with no option but to get themselves consolidated with other big institutions. Arranging of funds thus would be a key challenge for these institutions to transform themselves over the period. The key timelines of National Education Policy 2000 implementation includes formulation of National Curriculum Framework for School Education, National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education by 2020, a common guiding set of national professional standard for teachers by 2022, and achieving universal foundational literacy and numeracy in primary school by 2025. This is the time by which at least 50% of learners through the school and higher education system shall have exposure to vocational education. The next key year would be 2030, by which it is proposed to attain 100% gross enrollment ratio in preschool to secondary level. Further, early childhood care and education must thus be achieved as soon as possible and no later than 2030. Moreover, by 2030, a new four-year integrated B.Ed degree is expected to become the universal norm for being eligible for teaching. And there is also expectation of at least one large multidisciplinary higher education institution in or near every district by 2030. There are several other provisions without any specific timelines also. Achieving these timelines in light of a situation where the pandemic and the economic downturn have impacted the educational institutions and employment in unprecedented ways would be crucial. Despite several schemes announced by the government in the past to increase motivation level of teachers for improving quality of teaching, there has not been any major improvement in the same. Moreover, teacher vacancies have compounded the problem. The teachers that do exist are inadequately distributed in terms of surplus teacher in urban areas while deficit in rural areas. Although various measures have been announced in the policy, including announcement of a four-year integrated B.Ed program as minimal qualification for teacher education, in order to address the quality issue, ability to fulfill teacher vacancies amidst all these factors in order to meet standard student-teacher ratio would be crucial. Further, the development of a multidisciplinary institution providing such courses as per required timelines also seems challenging. National Education Policy proposes to invest in creation of open, interoperable, evolvable public digital infrastructure in the education sector that can be used by multiple platforms and point solutions to solve for India's scale, diversity, complexity, and device penetration. As per data available for 2016-17 in UDICE, only 9.85% of government schools have a functional computer and 4% have an internet connection. This itself puts into question the overwhelming reliance on online as well as digital education. As such, ability of the agency is to provide affordable computing devices, timely funding, best-in-class resources, and scalability of the infrastructure would be crucial for facilitating digital education. This chart shows rating dispersion of education sector entities rated by CARE. CARE's ratings in the education sector fall predominantly in the BBB and BB categories on account of small scale of operations, moderately leveraged capital structure, comfortable debt and interest coverage indicators, diversified revenue stream, and stiff competition. Of the total 122 players in education sector rated by CARE, about 50% fall under the investment grade category. Now I hand over the proceedings to Milind sir.
Thank you, Harsh. Now I have a few questions to ask our esteemed panelists. First question is that In your opinion, how exactly is this new education policy? Whether it will really achieve the goals which are set up for, or you feel that there are many misses in the policy? Any one of you can start, and the second one can take it afterwards.
Mr. Shastri or Mr. Sarangan, anyone can take up the question which Mr. Milind sir has posed, please. Thank you.
शास्त्री सर आप पहले बोले.
First of all, I would like to, can everyone hear me?
जी.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
First of all, I would like to thank CARE for choosing such a relevant topic and thinking of me to participate in this wonderful discussion. I personally feel that new education policy is a landmark document. It perceives a paradigm shift completely and addresses some of the shortcomings in our education system at a very fundamental level. Now, I think first and foremost thing which comes to my mind is its emphasis on the early childhood education, which had been lacking throughout. We are primarily focused on higher education, on a second priority, secondary education, and so on and so forth. And as a result, when the foundation is weak, whatever structure you built upon it tends to be shaky. So the very fundamental of languages, of mathematics, of science, of art, literature, if they are ingrained very well in the early childhood, when all the formative concepts are formulated, from the age of group of 3 to 8, and when the learning happens at its fastest rate, it's a well-settled principle. I think this is a very, very welcome move. Second thing is, I think there is some controversy about the language issue, but it is a well-settled principle all across the globe that creative thinking happens in one's own language. So, since this is a CARE rating, I will explain it through an example. See, we have different currencies at different levels, So, if you go to US and there's some entity which is $10 or $100, so you can't really assess how much that means unless you convert it into Indian rupees and then see is it expensive or it is less expensive or reasonable. So similarly, thinking happens in one's native language. And early childhood education has to be in mother tongue. I think there is no two opinion about it. I benefited from it in my early childhood. We learned English at the standard 6. And people sometimes say that that is an old-fashioned thinking. Now it's a 21st century, etc., etc. But I'll tell you, even my son both my son, they underwent the same education. And by the standard 8th or 9th, we were able to read English newspaper, etc., etc. So no one is denying the importance of English. But just to be able to think, I think the ability to think is the first thing. And to nurture it, I think the local language is a very strong vehicle. And the mistake, I am amazed that such a large country like ours has made a mistake that English is important, therefore you should teach 3-year-old through English medium. I think could be no argument which could be more fallacious than that. I mean, you need to learn English when you are about to leave school or join college, etc., etc. No one is denying the importance of English. But I think early childhood education should happen in one's native language. Secondly, I welcome this 3-language formula. This also is a well-settled principle all across the globe, that if you learn multiple languages, it's a very good training of the mind. So there was some concern in the English-speaking world, in US and UK, that they are only brought up in one language, that is English, and that limits them. And when they compared with some of the European countries, where part of the country speaks German, part of the country speaks French, and they are multilingual. And therefore, it's a common practice to learn 3 languages or 4 languages at a time. So apart from languages, the training of the mind is very effective by doing this. So I think this is a very, very good idea that we promote early childhood education through English, and then through the native language. And then not only we restrict them to 1 or 2 languages, but out of so many languages available throughout the country, we encourage children to learn 3 languages, which is a very, very good thing. And secondly, it integrates all knowledge, which is also a very good thing in my mind, knowledge without boundaries. I often say that just like we divide a country into states, India is divided into states and the world is divided into countries. So we have put the boundary walls between the states or between the countries. No one is allowed to cross the boundary wall. So you put barbed wires, and nobody should be able to jump over, so you flow current through the barbed wires. I think the same tendency people have shown about their subjects. They are so protective about their subjects. But knowledge doesn't happen. Knowledge has no boundaries. I often say in the context of engineering, the Delhi Metro is a very fantastic example. That is a civil engineering, that is mechanical, that is electrical, electronics, automation, all engineering together. So knowledge is comprehensive, it is together. So the boundary, the education policy foresees to remove it. And my last point I would like to make from my side is that it puts a strong emphasis on the character building and the development of the whole human personality. That is missing throughout our education discourse. And that is what I feel Banasthali specializes in. We have a 5-fold education system comprising of physical, practical, aesthetic, intellectual, of course, is there, and moral. So every student, irrespective of their specialization, must take some physical activity, some practical activity, some aesthetic activity. And that is how a wholesome personality is developed, and a lot of leadership qualities are inculcated. And we very proudly and humbly say that we are blessed that Banasthali has given many firsts to this country. The first lady parliament speaker, first assembly speaker, first marathon winner, first fighter plane pilot, and so many, just because that education has been so broad-based and it develops a lot of leadership skills. So I think the education policy puts emphasis on this. On the negative side, some people raise concern that will it be implemented as effectively, because it's so broad and so different from how the system had. But I feel that this criticism also is in a way support, because there are very little to find fault with in the policy document itself. And there seems to be a very strong political will. Our Honorable Prime Minister himself came and addressed all vice chancellors and heads of the educational institution, that he fully stands behind it and he sought the cooperation. So I feel that there is a strong political will to do it. And even if, in my humble opinion, we achieve partially, I think the education landscape will change for the better. So I welcome new education policy. as a very, very right intervention at the right time. And I'm really looking forward to taking part in it and to improve the education system overall in the country. Thank you. स्वर्णकार साहब, आप नमस्कार है आपको। एमएल स्वर्ण साहब, आपको मेरा नमस्कार बोलिएगा।
जी नमस्कार सर, आपको भी मेरा नमस्कार। और no doubt that the state and the country is proud of Vanasthali University.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, you are our pride. Your university is our pride, sir. Coming to Mr. Gadkari's question, I have made a few notes while listening to the eminent speakers, Vahishta and another gentleman with the K rating. See, let me start from the beginning. The benchmark of literacy in India is whether a person can write his or her name in English and write a few sentences. That has to be changed, because if you aim to increase literacy, you need to have a proper standard benchmark. With the advent of mobiles and widespread mobile handsets, smartphones, everybody can do it. Everybody can read, they can text, WhatsApp, हिंदी में भी कर लेंगे, इंग्लिश में भी कर लेंगे। तो ये बेंचमार्क थोड़ा सा चेंज होना चाहिए। जहां तक नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी 2020 का सवाल है, डेफिनेटली इट्स गुड, द विजन इज एक्सीलेंट, बट इट डिपेंड्स हाउ इट इज इम्प्लीमेंटेड। वी आर अ बिग डाइवर्स कंट्री, और जैसा कि शास्त्री सर ने कहा कि पॉलिसी अभी आए हुए 1 महीना भी नहीं हुआ है कि कंट्रोवर्सीज आने लग गई हैं मदर टंग को लेके, लोकल लैंग्वेज को लेके, तमिल में नहीं सीखेंगे, हिंदी में नहीं सीखेंगे, ये वो। आई थिंक ऑल द लोकल लैंग्वेजेस हैव टू बी रिस्पेक्टेड अनडाउटेडली, बिकॉज वी थिंक इन आवर लैंग्वेज। अगर मैं इंग्लिश बोल रहा हूँ तो मैं पहले अपने माइंड में उसको हिंदी में सोच रहा हूँ, ट्रांसलेट कर रहा हूँ, फिर बोल रहा हूँ। ये हम सबों के साथ होता है। जिस लैंग्वेज में हम पले बड़े हैं वही उसी में हम सोचते हैं, और जो लैंग्वेज सिखाई जाती है फिर उसमें ट्रांसलेट करके बोलते हैं। तो अगर आपकी लैंग्वेज तमिल है, बांग्ला है, तेलुगु है, हिंदी है, दैट शुड बी रिस्पेक्टेड। और जो थ्री लैंग्वेज पॉलिसी है, इट इज अ वेरी गुड इनिशिएटिव to address all the issues. You can make everybody learn Hindi in the country, plus you can promote the local languages as well. But again, English, the importance of English cannot be undermined. देखिए, हमारे जो डॉक्टर्स हैं वो वर्ल्ड ओवर बहुत रिस्पेक्ट किए जाते हैं, इंजीनियर्स बहुत रिस्पेक्ट किए जाते हैं। जो ये बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंग्स बनी है, बुर्ज खलीफा, और जापान में जो टनल्स बन रही हैं, स्विट्जरलैंड में जो टनल्स बन रही हैं, they all are Indians have an important role to play in those mega structures. तो कहीं ना कहीं इंग्लिश का रोल है। अगर हम इंग्लिश में नहीं सीखे होते शायद, तो हमारे लोग वहां तक नहीं पहुंच पाते। बट ये अपने को बैलेंस करना है कि अपने को we have to make sure the education is widespread in the local language so that the entire country is benefited, our own country. At the same time, English में भी importance दी जाए, English को भी importance दी जाए, especially technical subjects में, medicine में, engineering में, computers में, so that our workforce can excel at the global level. ये Chinese नहीं कर पाते ये काम, even Eastern Europeans भी ये काम नहीं कर पाते, ये सिर्फ Indians कर पाते हैं, because we are taught the technical subjects in English. So we should make sure that this is not lost. And then I would like to briefly comment on the new policy. The good part is the creation of academic credit bank. I think this is unique to our policy. No other country has this credit bank, so it should be promoted. The university is a university. हमने उसको differentiate कर दिया है, ये सरकारी यूनिवर्सिटी है, ये deemed to be है, ये private है। 99% of the qualified population does not know the difference between a deemed university and a private university. वो private को deemed समझते हैं, deemed को private समझते हैं। तो ये सब खत्म होना चाहिए। University is a university, और ये किया भी है सरकार ने। And then the research foundation is a very welcome step. This was much awaited. थोड़ा सा करीब 15-20 साल लेट आया है, लेकिन देर आए दुरुस्त आए। और प्लस ये जो सब काउंसिल्स बनी है, रिसर्च काउंसिल, एक्रेडिटेशन काउंसिल्स, जनरल काउंसिल्स, ये एक अच्छा स्टेप है टू स्ट्रेटिफाई द गवर्नेंस इन एजुकेशन। लेटरल एंट्री एग्जिट ऑप्शंस बहुत अच्छे हैं इसमें। इसका नो डाउट फंड फ्लो पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा, वो मैं लास्ट में जब थोड़ा सा केयर के बारे में बोलूंगा तो उसमें आई जस्ट ट्राई टू कवर इट. एंड few of my suggestions, like I don't know whether I'm authorized to suggest on the NEP or not, but since this is a relevant forum, so I would like to put forth my views. जो autonomous status है should not be universal. हम कह रहे हैं 2035 तक all the universities, all the HEI higher education institutions would be autonomous. No, it should be a benchmark of excellence rather than universality. आप हर किसी को autonomous मत करिए, आप जो आपके सेट एक्सेलेंस क्राइटेरिया में आते हैं उनको ऑटोनॉमस किया जाए. Creating everybody autonomous would lead to a big mess. The thrust has to be on 3 R's. जब मैंने पहली बार ये पॉलिसी पढ़ी थी 10-12 दिन पहले, जब मेरे पास फोन आया केयर वालों का, तो मैंने सोचा थोड़ी तैयारी कर लूं, कुछ बोलना पड़ेगा 2-3 मिनट. तो उसमें मेरे माइंड में 3 R आए. फर्स्ट इज द रीच. You have to make sure the education is propagated in each and every nook and corner of the country. Second is research. Research has been given well emphasis on. Third is regulation. Regulation has to be objective. अगर आप subjective regulation करेंगे तो जो भी regulating officer है, authority है, उसके whims and fancies पे आप हो सकता है एक बंदा मेरे को पास करे, एक बंदा फेल करे. It has to be very much objective, जैसे NAC accreditation होता है. It is very structured. Each and every points are defined. उसमें फाउल प्ले का या अननेसेसरी इन्फ्लुएंस का की गुंजाइश बहुत कम रहती है. तो रेगुलेशन हैज टू बी स्ट्रक्चर्ड, इट हैज टू बी ऑब्जेक्टिव. प्लस एज फार एज फाइनेंसेस आर कंसर्न्ड, वी हैव टू बी अ सरप्लस जनरेटिंग एंटिटी. चाहे यूनिवर्सिटी हो, रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड हो, टीचिंग ओरिएंटेड हो या स्टैंड अलोन कॉलेज हो, सरप्लस जब तक जनरेट नहीं करेंगे आप सस्टेन नहीं कर सकते. अगेन, सरप्लस जनरेटिंग इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम प्रॉफिटेरिंग. वी आर नॉट इनटू बिजनेस. हम व्यवसाय में नहीं है, चाहे चिकित्सा का हो चाहे एजुकेशन का हो, बट यस, टू सस्टेन यू हैव टू जनरेट प्रॉफिट. As far as my organization, Mahatma Gandhi University of Health Sciences and Technology is concerned, I don't think so we fall under NEP at the moment, because we are regulated by the Medical Council of India, Dental Council of India, and now the National Medical Commission. जो उनके points हैं regarding research, teaching, standalone colleges, they resonate with the National Education Policy, but again it's a totally different governing structure altogether. And lastly, केयर की जो लास्ट स्लाइड थी उसमें एज एन इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑप्शन आप लोगों ने प्रोजेक्ट किया था हायर एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशंस को या स्कूल्स को किया था. आई डोंट नो, स्कूल्स नहीं थे उसमें, सिर्फ HEIs थे. तो जो आपके केयर BBB+ हैं उनको आप एज अ गुड इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑप्शन बताते हैं आप लोग. तो अगेन दिस इज अबाउट जनरेटिंग surplus, right? If they don't generate surplus or they work at no profit, no loss, then the ratings fall apart. There is no point in that. So I would say that yes, we have to generate surplus, and जो education institutions हैं उसके लिए rating का एक different मापदंड होना चाहिए, different criteria होना चाहिए. We are not into any other business like aviation or hotel industry या कुछ और. The dynamics are absolutely different. So with these few words, I would like to thank the management at CARE for inviting me and allowing me to to share the stage with such a privileged and such a honorable speaker, Mr. Shastri ji. Thank you very much. Over to you, the organizer.
Yeah, so in turn, you have actually answered my second question also. Mr. Shastri, would you like to say anything which has been missed in the policy, which you thought that should have been there?
Well, in my opinion, much has been made for the wider consultation, and I can vouch for that, because the committee wanted to interact with all deemed to be universities. So as a representative of deemed to be universities, I went for a day-long meeting, then as a representative of a private university, and then most importantly, as a representative of a women's university. And this is where I find that through the minister, etc., I have pressed so many points. Some have been incorporated, but I feel the kind of attention women's education requires is not that visible. Some people argue that education is education, what is so different from men's education and women's education? That is not the correct view, in my opinion, because formal education is 1,000-year-old. Oxford, Cambridge, they started operating 950 to 1,000 years ago. Harvards and all these Ivy League institutions came 500-600 years ago. So even they opened their doors to women about 100 to 125 years back. So in round figures, we can say that formal education is 1,000 years old, whereas participation of women is only 100 years old. So essentially, we are subjecting women to the same education which was created subconsciously, assuming only men to be the audience. At the Women's University, I see it is the first and foremost responsibility of me to look at education from women's perspective. The way sometime I explain it is कि एक सुनार होता है और एक लोहार होता है, So लोहार knows, you put the metal wherever it is gold or it is iron. उसको वो तपाएंगे भट्टी में, उसके ऊपर हथौड़ा मारेंगे, लोहे से वार करेंगे, and they make some useful equipment out of you, maybe in olden days भाला बना लेंगे, तलवार बना लेंगे, और आजकल कोई मोटर पार्ट बना लेंगे. But Sunar operates differently. He is very delicate. He makes ornaments and, सर का ताज बनाते हैं. तो महिलाओं के लिए अलग शिक्षण संस्थाएं होनी चाहिए जो सुनार की तरह उनको कैरेक्टर को बिल्ड करे, नर्चर करे विद डेलिकेसी से. उनको भी ये लोहार के पास भेज देंगे तो वो मतलब दे विल make a motor part out of gold, but which is such a wasteful thing. When I was a student in US at MIT, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that there are 200 all-women colleges even in US. Unfortunately, number has gone down a little bit, but still. And there is a statistics which tells that an average graduate out of a women's college in US, an average graduate, is typically 7 times as successful as a women graduate coming out of a co-educational institution. All the big names that you hear, Hillary Clinton, Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, so all these top women leaders in US in all walks of life, they all have been graduates from women colleges. Hillary has come from a Wellesley College, some from Barnard College, and so on and so forth. So I think a strong emphasis on women's only institution is missing perhaps. Gadkari ji, I hope I have given you a point which no one else is talking in the country so far.
Yeah, definitely. This is quite a different perspective. And frankly speaking, like we also had a similar view that education is education. So yes, definitely as a practitioner, you would have better knowledge about this aspect.
Yes, sir.
I think I agree with Mr. Shastri, sir, that more emphasis needs to be given to women's education. But this is the time of equality. We say men and women are equal. I personally believe they are not equal. Women are far superior. That's my personal view. But दुनिया ये कहती है कि men and women are equal. So they should be given equal educational opportunities. But as far as governance and administration is concerned, more thrust should be given to women's education, especially in the rural part of the country, wherein women are not even allowed to step out of their house to attend schools, and they don't get even nutritious share of food in their household. So given the circumstances, yes, I would agree. I think the important point that was missed out or evaded, I don't know, I cannot say, is about reservation. some address, it's more of a regulatory, parliament and legislative issue, but there has to be something about reservation. If I have benefited from reservation at the graduate level, then post-graduation should be competitive or jobs should be competitive. And if I have become an IAS or something senior, then my children should not get the benefit of reservation. So something about reservation should have been, I feel, should have been mentioned. And importantly, about the yoga and the spiritual health, the policy does not discuss anything about spirituality and spiritual health. That is much needed, even in these COVID times when you're locked down in your houses and doing webinars on online and video conferencing. You need to have a strong mind and strong spirit. So yeah, reservation policies and spiritual health were missed out. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vaishta, you had other questions?
So we are running short of time.
we have
So probably, Vaishta, you have some questions for the panel?
Yeah, Harsh, do you have a question? Then after you, maybe I can address my question.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to understand from Swarnkar sir that apart from the funding issues, what other challenges these standalone higher education institutions are likely to face in becoming multidisciplinary?
See, there are two answers to this question. One is direct and another is indirect. Let me address the indirect first. I had written it specifically for you. I missed it while speaking. Yeah. See, there are certain higher education institutions who have a core competency like IIM, IITs, my university, for example, where we are only into medical specialties, and then you have the VIT, the CMCs. So if you force them to become multidisciplinary, they might not be able to be top of their game in the core specialty, and that might indirectly affect revenues. So that is one. So the core competency institutes should be left alone to pursue their specialities. If they voluntarily want to become integrated and holistic and multidisciplinary, that should be their outlook. And the direct part is capping the fees. See, you cannot cap the fees in the higher education institute. In the private sector, that's what I feel. You throw it open to the competition. If I'm giving good quality, if my graduates are being selected, then definitely I can charge a premium for that or whatever I want to. But people will pay, people will seek admission in my college. And if I'm not, then there is so much of competition. It's such a vast country that you'll not survive with the higher fees. So the quality and the finances, I feel, go hand in hand as far as fees capping is concerned. Yes, there should be a limit. There should not be any exaggerated charges. But again, there has to be a difference between two institutions when they charge the fees. And one more thing is the lateral entry and exit options. So if people are exiting out of your course, definitely you're losing money. But if they are entering into your course in the second or third year, then you do get more revenue. So it's kind of balanced. And if you only have people exiting and nobody entering, then you need to relook at the policy. More important than the ratings, you need to look at your own working style.
Yeah.
So
I comment on this point.
जी सर, जस्ट लास्ट पॉइंट, ऑल इन ऑल जो फाइनेंशियल एस्पेक्ट है, बहुत ज्यादा असर अभी मेरे हिसाब से नहीं पड़ना चाहिए शॉर्ट टू मीडियम टर्म में. जी सर, ओवर टू यू.
हर्ष जी, आपका सवाल तो स्वर्णकार जी से था, बट आई वुड ऑल्सो लाइक टू ऐड माई व्यू. I think this emphasis on the comprehensive educational institution, personally, I kind of support it, because the word university itself incorporates universality, So I think if there is a single discipline university, I mean, the trend these days is that there are law universities. So just by interacting with lawyers, I don't think you can be a very effective lawyer. You know, you have to be. Just to give you an example, during my MIT days, I stayed in a dormitory called Ashdown House, which is just opposing the main building. So we had 56 nationalities represented in a house of 400 to 450 capacity, following 48 different disciplines. So I always feel that whatever I was taught in the class, living in that hostel with so much of diversity, with 56 different nationalities and 48 different disciplines, you know, some are lawyers, some are managers, some are designers, some are engineers, and everybody has its own way of thinking, you know. So I think I agree with Swarnkar Saab that, you know, perhaps IIMs and IITs are such a specialized institution which should not be tempered with. But this trend which is increasing, that open more law universities, open more design universities, open more single discipline universities, I still feel that the best of the best, because, you know, when you talk about management, you talk about Harvard Business School or law school, and Harvard is the quintessential comprehensive university. You know, it has everything. So that is what I feel, that the universities fundamentally have to be multidisciplinary. I mean, let's not temper with our existing great institutions, but now the focus should be on comprehensive universities. And secondly, about the fee regulation, he raised a very good point. The policy occasionally comes at that there will be a common test for all possible courses for admission. There will be a fee regulation system. I think on the one hand, you talk about autonomy, and on the other hand, you talk about these regulations. I think these are not healthy trends. You know, we should leave all these to market. I agree with Swarnkar. And we should do away with this, and market will take care of that. I will have to provide the best quality of education at the most competitive cost. So my take on this is that all these regulative part should be kept to the minimum. That's what I feel.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. I understand we are actually lacking time right now, but I would just want to squeeze in one more question, which is actually very relevant today. That what are your views on migrating to digital education? Now, is it that it might further widen the gap between the students who have never enrolled in school and the students who are already existing studying in schools? Because for digital education, there is a certain amount of infrastructure which is essential. But what about the students, or what about families who have 2 or 3 kids in a house and have only one laptop? So how is that going to work now?
Question is to me or to Swarnkar sir?
So either of you, both of you can answer, please.
सर आप उत्तर दें आप
lead लीजिए sir. You are raising such wise points, such wise views, and I'm very happy that we are aligned so much in whatever we think.
नहीं absolutely sir. मैं तो अंदर से बहुत खुश हो रहा हूँ कि आपके साथ मैंने ये शेयर किया, तो I'm very happy and thank you so much. Yeah, answering to her question. See, shiksha is like bhiksha. Don't confuse bhiksha with bheek. Bheek तो ये अंग्रेजों ने और जो रूलर्स आए इंडिया में, उन्होंने वो भिक्षा बोल नहीं पाते थे तो भीख कर करके उसको डाउनग्रेड कर दिया. तो उसके लिए फिजिकली प्रेजेंट होना जरूरी है. There has to be a giver who gives and there has to be a taker who takes. Digital cannot replace this. So first mode of shiksha or instruction has to be physical, be it school or be it college. उसके ऊपर आप डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म से बिल्टअप करें, जैसे हम लोग ये वेबिनार कर रहे हैं, वो ठीक है, बट इनिशियली देयर हैज टू बी अ फिजिकल मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन इन द स्कूल. सो नीदर शुड इट नॉर वी शुड प्लान दैट डिजिटल शुड रिप्लेस एज द. ये मैं करस्पॉन्डेंस कोर्सेज के लिए भी कहना चाह रहा था कि करस्पॉन्डेंस कोर्सेज शुड बी ओपन फॉर ग्रेजुएट्स ओनली मिनिमम. don't offer graduation by correspondence. तो पर्सनल इंटरेक्शन खत्म नहीं होना चाहिए. और जहां तक 3 बच्चों पे एक लैपटॉप की बात है, अज्यूमिंग वो बच्चे 12वीं तक स्कूल में पढ़े हैं फिजिकली, तो वो अलग अलग टाइम पे स्लॉट किया जा सकता है एक लैपटॉप को. So that is doable. Just to answer your question, 3 people can still use one laptop.
I fully endorse the view of Swarnkar Saab. You know, education is 3 things: learning, doing, and being. So by improving the quality of online education, you can perhaps try to match up the learning part. But what about doing? You can't do much about doing, and being to bilkul bhul jaiye, you know. So I think under the current circumstances, as an emergency measure, is very good. And I think we have completed last academic year through online, and this year also without wasting a single day, Vanasthri migrated to online. But online education is only limited in its reach. And I feel if you can incorporate some 10% or so into your day-to-day activity, what some people say hybrid education. Because what you write on a blackboard, etc., sometimes, you know, you can incorporate animations and presentations and make it more effective. To that extent, yes. But even the talk of online education replacing or standing as an alternate to face-to-face, I don't think so. It will be very disastrous. You should not even think. In the regular, normal mode of education, if you want to incorporate some 10% through online to make it more effective, that perhaps is plausible. ये तो मेडिसिन के हैं स्वर्णकार साहब, ये तो इमरजेंसी सॉल्यूशन है कि कोई पेशेंट आईसीयू में आया, दिस इज अ क्रिटिकल केयर थिंग. तो अभी पूरा दुनिया ही आईसीयू में है, तो क्रिटिकल केयर करके उसको सरवाइव करना है कुछ टाइम तक. But that will not give the health to the patient, you know. So we should strive that we come back to the normal as quickly as possible.
जैसे आप बच्चे को ऑनलाइन रियर नहीं कर सकते, आपके बच्चों को, बेटा बेटी को आप ही को पाल पोस के बड़ा करना है, ऐसे पढ़ाना भी फिजिकली पड़ेगा ऑनलाइन.
Right, sir. I completely agree to what both of you are saying. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mridul.
Yes, sir. There's an external question. Probably we can squeeze in one question from the audience. The person is Vikas Rai, is asking whether the issues like lack of probability in public life and research creativity will be solved through NEP 2020.
I personally feel policies cannot solve anything. It has to be your own will. अगर पॉलिसी से सॉल्व हो जाता तो ह्यूमन वैल्यूज अलग नहीं होती. अगर आपको रिसर्च, इंडिया में भी बहुत सारे इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं जो रिसर्च करते हैं और अच्छी रिसर्च करते हैं, और बहुत सारे हैं जो सिर्फ टीचिंग पे या सिर्फ अपनी कोर कॉम्पिटेंस पे ध्यान देते हैं. तो रिसर्च इज नॉट अ फॉल आउट ऑफ पॉलिसी. देयर आर स्टिल इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक ICMR, DBT, DST जो अच्छी ग्रांट्स देते हैं रिसर्च में, even Government of India, even foreign agencies, and you can use that as the seed money to go ahead with your projects. Don't depend on any policy for that. NEP 2050 also will not change that. So, yeah.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you very much. Dr. Aditi Shastri, it's a privilege to have you, and Mr. Vikas Savankar also. Thank you for the panelists for the wonderful insights, and dear participants, thank you for taking a time out and being a part of this Care Ratings webinar. For any further queries, suggestions, you're please welcome to write us in the feedback mail, which will coming no sooner the webinar ends. Thank you and goodbye for now.
Thank you, organizers. Thank you,
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vikasji. It's a pleasure to meet you, and Milindji, Vahista, and Harsh. Wonderful job.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you for being a part of this wonderful webinar.